Okay, so we are now recording. So welcome everyone to our weekly call. Just so you know, or hopefully most of you will be aware, but this week we're going to do a first of a two-part preview of the IETF 120 meeting agenda. To manage expectations, if you've not yet had a chance to look at the agenda, assuming it's of interest to you, virtually none of the working groups have yet to publish their individual agendas. So I'm going to call out at fairly high level the things which look like they should be interesting, just to signpost those. But we will revisit this next week with hopefully more detail on the specific sessions of interest. And what I'd like to do, if anyone else has had a chance to even glance at the agenda, if there's anything that you think is especially compelling that for whatever reason I've missed, please say, because it might be far better than anything I've highlighted and I might want to go to it. So do shout out as we go through. Okay, the easy bit first, and then we're plowing to the agenda, which is very content rich this time round. It's got more sessions, I think, than any previous meeting, certainly any of the previous meetings over the last few years. But the easy bit is the hackathon, as always, runs from runs over the weekend, the Saturday the 20th, Sunday 21st of July. So only a couple of weekends time, so it's coming around real fast now. And as always, the sort of results presentations from the hackathon take place on the Sunday afternoon between 2 and 4 p.m. Also on Sunday the 21st in the morning, as is I think traditional, has been for some considerable while, the Internet Engineering and Planning Group, IEPG, has a 2-hour session booked in Georgia A, to be really precise. I've no idea where that is, but that's obviously one of the meeting rooms in the conference hotel. Last time around, that was really interesting, including a wide range of sessions, so I'm sure that will be the same this time. They tend to be more operational issues, deployment sort of related things, etc., measurement results, that sort of stuff. So more operationally orientated in general terms than a lot of the rest of the IETF meeting will be. And I think technically it's not part of the IETF, but it just always seems to get a slot on the Sunday morning. And then Sunday afternoon, the IETF meeting proper starts. Firstly, for new participants, so technically that's normally the agreed term is anyone that's not been to more than 5 meetings in person. Although I don't think there's any. That's not stringently applied, but that's the guideline. So there's a quick connections to introduce people relatively new to the community to each other that runs between 4 and 5 p.m. And that segues into the welcome reception, which on Sunday runs from 5 till 8. And also then on Sunday between 6 and 8 is the Hot RFC Lightning Talks. So those are sessions of presentations where you're allocated a maximum of 4 minutes to say something about something you feel should be of interest to some people in the community. The usual intent is to garner the interest of those people and get them to then coordinate afterwards how to move things forward. But they're pretty strict, I think, on the 4-minute slot allocation, and that's generally for those of people not presenting. That's quite a relaxing thing to do, to listen to some presentations with a bottle of beer or beverage of your choice in hand on the Sunday evening to sort of ease you into the IETF ethos. Okay, so that's, if you like, the straightforward bit. What I'm now going to do, because virtually none of the agendas are available, I'm simply going to highlight those things on the agenda which would almost always be of interest to me, but I'll reserve final judgment until I've had a chance to read through the details of the individual working group agendas. So this time next week, I'll come back and signpost why I'm most likely to go to the Deleg meeting in session 2 on Monday, for example. I'm just going to roll through these, not going to have a great deal to say about them because frankly for virtually all of them there's nothing really to say unless you've been delving through all of the mailing lists and maybe teased out some things from those. And if you have, by the way, at any point please interrupt me and shout out accordingly. And yes, I've just seen Glenn's note that it will be Canadian beer this time, which is indeed true for the hot RFC, not for the Monday morning. It might be a bit early for that. As you'll see as we go through this, there are more slots or more time slots than there have been previously, so that become apparent quite quickly. But anyway, Monday morning session 1, I will highly probably be in the IETF wide dispatched session, which is technically still labelled as a birds of a feather because it's an experiment that was started in Brisbane at the last meeting. And may run for one more before the decision's made one way or the other. But the intent is this replaces all of the other dispatch type sessions in each of the individual areas with one consolidated dispatch session that's IETF wide. When we did this in Brisbane, there was nothing else on the agenda to maximise the opportunity for the community to engage. This time round, I think because of necessity for competition on agenda slots and to minimise the clashes, there have been a few other things you can see also running in the same time slot, but they try to minimise the likely overlap with anything that's on the agenda for the dispatch session as far as is practical, given that the dispatch session hasn't been completely finalised yet. But anyway, that's the plan for me for session 1, and I'm going to plough through this, by the way, unless someone chimes in by popping something in the chat or just unmuting and talking or raising your virtual hand, whatever's easiest. So I just run through this otherwise from top to bottom just to set your expectations. Session 2, the thing I wanted to highlight was the Deleg session, which I think now is the first official session for the new working group. You may recall that it was a BOF in Brisbane, having been part of the hackathon in Prague. So it's gone from hackathon to BOF to working group over the course of 3 meetings, which is amazingly efficient. I'm actually very impressed to see that. The other session I would otherwise go to would be the IETF, so that's the Internet Research Task Force open meeting. But probably because of the clash, I will be in the Deleg meeting as the more directly relevant to me. As you can see, there's a range of other things running concurrently as well. Okay, then session 3 on Monday. The 2 things so far that have caught my eye are the DNS ops session, and that's probably the one that I'll go to. Otherwise, the SRv6 ops I certainly went to in Brisbane, and I think it was interesting just to see the dynamic, because I think the message from the community was that there was a preparedness from the ADs to try and find more agenda time for stuff that was more directly relevant to network operators, and it wasn't immediately obvious to me whether they were getting sort of thumbs up from the network operators that was the right thing for them. But anyway, it's on the agenda this time around as well. But in all probability, I'll be in the DNS ops session, which I think there are 2 on the agenda, but I can't honestly remember because there's so much stuff. It's all a bit of a blur. Okay, and then session 4. So this is the first noteworthy change. I think for the last few meetings, most days have only had 3 sessions per day. I think Brisbane may have had 4 on 2 days, whereas as you see, It's expanded somewhat. Suzanne's helpfully told me the second DNS Ops session is the last slot on Thursday. Thank you, Suzanne. Anyway, session 4 on Monday. So just to sort of signpost that there's a lot more slots overall that have been allocated. I'll almost certainly go to the PEARG working group, the Privacy Enhancement and Assessments Research Group, which I've generally found interesting when I've been able to go, but often, I think recently, there have been agenda clashes. But session 4, I'd like to go to that, and then not that I'll be going to it, but any new participants, again, there's a new participants dinner to continue the sort of the new participants networking on the Monday evening, but you do need to register for that, and I think also for the networking on the Sunday evening as well. So if you are in the category of new participant, if you haven't already done so, please do make a point of registering to attend those. It's my experience when I was sort of newer to the community, that was a useful thing to do. And $15 is not so terrible for dinner. Quite a bargain in Vancouver, having seen the price of hotel rooms and so on. Okay,
Andrew, before you move off Monday, sorry to interrupt.
about to say, want to add anything? So please do, Glenn.
Yeah, I did. I want to highlight that at the media operations session from 3:30 to 1700, I'm presenting some work, and it's going to be submitted later today before the deadline with Sanjay Mishra from Verizon. We are bringing an issue that we raised actually when we were in Brisbane. There's a problem arising from network overlays and how they're impacting the streaming environment. I flag it here because there's a DNS component here as well. Essentially, the problem we're highlighting is that when you have network overlay services such as mass-based iCloud private relay, inserting themselves inside the application workflow for, in particular, our case, streaming applications, but not doing it in a way that's completely transparent to the application itself. It changes things for the worse in many cases for the streaming applications, especially if you're in a very low latency, bandwidth sensitive type environment. I just highlighted because people on this call might be interested in hearing that discussed at the media ops thing. I think it's a 20-minute session or something we have for it. But it's going to be very focused on that. It's intended to open a discussion on what is the sort of the best design criteria if you are going to design these overlay services for the internet. How should you expose them, for instance, to the application so the application can discover if its traffic is going to be affected by this design change or these policy changes on the network. So there's a lot of overlap, I think, with the DNS community, because obviously one of the things that these overlays today do change is your DNS resolver. Sometimes the resolver changes, sometimes your IP address as perceived from the application to the endpoint it's talking to changes, along with routing changes. And so I think there's a big overlap that people might be interested in being part of that conversation. So sorry to add a third topic there, and sorry, Suzanne, for going against DNS ops. It was not my intention when we put it in.
Just one thought to that, Glenn, and you, since you're far more experienced at this than I am, I'm sure it's occurred to you. Since you got 2 DNS ops sessions, had you thought about trying to insert a briefing about this, even if it's only a couple of minutes in the session on Thursday? The DNS ops session, just to flag to them they may wish to watch the recording, for example.
If the DNS ops chairs would give us 5 minutes on the agenda, I'd be happy to pop in, as long as it doesn't conflict with ADD, which is on Thursday. And yes. I hope they didn't conflict DNS ops with ADD.
Yeah, that would be unfortunate, wouldn't it?
And yet it would be very sad. Yeah, Glenn, we can take it offline, but yeah, that sounds reasonable to me.
Okay. You don't really have much on the agenda for DNS ops, do you? So,
Oh, of course not. Never. It's the quiet and boring corner of the IETF.
Absolutely.
Well, we have ops against ops. I just noticed here, right? I mean, it's like we got two ops, or we have three ops groups all together at the same time on Monday.
yeah.
We can blame more on Kamari. Not that it's his fault, just because we can.
I mean, Warren always stands up and will accept the blame for pretty much everything. I'm actually worried about why Warren has caused all this climate change, but that's on Warren.
Yes, I can see Tom is conflicted as well by the look of it, which is also a challenge. We may come on to some other conflicts like that imminently, I suspect. But okay, go that. I'll add that to the things to highlight, particularly for this session next week as well. Ironic that I chose to ignore the handful of sessions that do have agendas, because virtually none of them did. And of course, the Media Ops one is one of the few exceptions. So presumably, had I delved into that, it would have told me that there was that slot already on there, Glenn. But hey ho. Right. Anyway, let me move on. Okay, so we're on Tuesday now, and again, just interrupt if there's stuff you think I've missed that you want to draw attention to. So on Tuesday, as a sort of default, I'm highlighting any of the BOF sessions just because they're often well worthwhile going to, and this particular one for me doesn't have an obvious clash other than possibly the Ops and Management Area Working Group, but at the moment probably not. So that's the Secure Communication of Network Properties, which at least the topic is definitely of interest to me for session 1 on Tuesday. Session 2, we got MIMI, the More Instant Messaging Interoperability, which has got 2 slots. That's the first of 2. And also the first of a number of applied networking research workshops. The first one on routing and congestion, you'll see as we work through the agenda that there's a number of others that will come up. Actually, in fairness, there's also the one in session 1, which is the introduction, which also looks at measurements as well, which I haven't currently highlighted. So this is technically the second one of them. I think I heard some background noise there. Was someone trying to jump in, or was it just background noise? I get this background noise. Okay. Carry on Tuesday, session 3. Again, you'll see the next of the applied network research workshops covering security and energy, which will certainly be of interest. Other than that, you've got the MASK working group, a meeting. I've highlighted that because every time I've not highlighted it, someone's jumped in to say that that's definitely of interest. So I thought I might just save that discussion, highlight that as well. So mention that, and potentially also, well, I've not highlighted it currently until I see the agenda. There's the post-quantum use in protocols immediately above the MASK session in session 3. And then session 4, the only thing that's jumped out at me so far is the next of the applied networking research workshops that I'm looking at just with lightning papers, which I think the details of those are available, but again, I've not looked at that yet to just confirm, but by default, I'd be drawn towards that. Let me pause there and see if anyone thinks I've missed anything obvious on Tuesday. Doesn't seem likely. Right, good. Okay, and obviously again there were 4 sessions there, just reinforcing the point that there's a lot more stuff on the agenda overall. On Wednesday, then session 1, we got digital emblems BOF. As I said, I'd highlight all of the BOFs. That clashes with the decentralization of the Internet Research Group, DINRG, which I think is a really important topic. So probably I'd be drawn to that, but I'm also conflicted with the measurement and analysis for protocols, the MAP research group. as well. So just to highlight that you've got clashing research groups, even though every time I put in feedback on the agenda, I always put in, please don't have research groups clashing. There's more than enough slots through the week to spread them out, but that obviously has yet to have any effect on the people that do the scheduling. Jumping down to Wednesday session 2, you got the RASP research group, research analysis of standard setting processes, proposed research group, getting so that's the first one, and then directly underneath that there's another BOF, which is getting ready for energy efficient networking, which is, I think, an important topic, although I haven't yet seen the agenda to get a sense of what specific aspects of that it's looking at. I presume there'll be something on the mailing list to give a steer for the sort of direction of travel for the for the draft charter, etc. But not a chance to look at that yet. And they're both competing with the TLS working group, which always has got a lot of stuff on its agenda. Many of you will be aware I have a specific interest in encrypted client hello, although that's gone on from the working group to the ISG, so I don't think that will get a reference there. I can see Tommy's just popped something in the agenda. Right, yeah, I'll let other people read the chat. I'm not sure that warrants reading out, but Tommy can unmute and say so if he thinks differently. Otherwise, I will proceed. So, okay, then looking at Wednesday session 3, I'll almost certainly go to the Human Rights Protocol Considerations, HRPC research group, which again, every time I've been there, that's definitely been of interest. So it's the one area that explicitly looks at human rights in the sort of within the IETF context. And then rather than session 4 on Wednesday, as always, we've got the IETF plenary to round off the Wednesday. Again, shout out if anyone thinks I've missed anything particularly important on the Wednesday so far from what you've seen. Isn't any shouting? I'll continue on. So taking us into Thursday, we got the second of the MIMI, more instant messaging interoperability sessions. I know people previously have sort of mixed views whether MIMI is going anywhere useful or not, but if there is a way of getting interoperability between the different types of interesting of kind of instant messaging, so the likes of iMessage and I don't know WhatsApp and Signal and so on, was sort of keeping the encryption in movement between platforms, then I think it's a worthwhile exercise. But anyway, that's kind of what it's tasked with doing. The other one for me in session 1 on Thursday is the again the BOF, this one being network attestation for secure routing, which is also in session 1 on the Thursday. Oh yeah, just seeing in the chat, Wilman has commented, yeah, I did put this in the news headlines this week. So go back to the TLS working group, there is a SSL keylog file extension for ECH 0 draft, because it came out within the last week or so, so that potentially would be on the agenda for TLS. But we'll find out hopefully by this time next week when all the agendas for the working group should be available. Okay, going back to the slide. So also on Thursday is the sisters lunch. So definitely worth going to for those of you who are female, or I think I'm right saying female or non-binary. So if you're new, particularly if you're new to the community, that's a particularly valuable session to go to, in my view. Or so people tell me that are better informed about it than I am. Session 2 then is the IAB Open. Which certainly based on the meeting in Brisbane was really interesting. So I definitely plan to go to that. And for me, at least, I don't see any obvious diary clashes time-wise. Session 3 on Thursday. Probably I go to the ADD one. Nothing else competing with it. So clearly I'll go to that with great interest, given that Tao and Glenn are both on this call, and it's got yet another RFC under its belt now as a working group, which is not bad. It's still a relatively young working group in IETF terms. So the output of the productive output of the working group is being maintained, which is fantastic. And then in session 4, so again, fourth session for Thursday, I'll go to the SPICE, Secure Patterns for Internet Credentials, which is working on sort of mechanism to convey sort of information about yourself without conveying all of your information. So if there's age verification on the site, you can convey to the site that you are indeed over 18 or under 13 or whatever it happens to be, but without saying who you are or what your date of birth is or any other non-essential information to meet the gating criteria. So it's a secure way of sharing that information with other parties, which I think is a really important problem that does need to be solved. Again, I'll pause to see if anyone else has got anything else to add, but highlight in the chat that Glenn has asked if anyone needs a slot on the agenda for the ADD working group session 3 on Thursday to please email the chairs using the add-chairs@ietf.org if you've not already done so. Okay, anything else anyone wants to call out from Thursday? If not, I will proceed with session 5 on Thursday. So I think this is a new departure for the IETF to have 5 sessions on Thursday, which includes the final of the DNS ops, so the second of the 2 DNS ops sessions, but also the Oblivious HTTP application intermediation working group also has agenda time in session 5 on Thursday. So if you're there on the Thursday, hopefully you're in it for the long haul through to 8:30 in the evening, and then if you're 7:30 in the evening, after which, if you're a new participant, as you can see, there's a social hour directly afterwards at 7:30. I think the rest of us will probably collapse in a heap from exhaustion after 5 separate working group sessions back to back through Thursday. Finally, on Friday, only 3 sessions, I think, on Friday. First one for me is the Independent Stream Open meeting, which I think is going to be a really interesting discussion, IS Open, on Friday morning, just sort of talking about that, and the agenda for that is available. Again, we'll spend a bit more time probably on that and a few of the others next week. Session 2, I've got either network management ops or privacy preserving measurement even. I'll probably myself go to the network management ops, but that would be the alternate for me, would be the PPM session. And then last but not least, session 3, nothing jumped out at me as especially compelling. Other than what's technically session 4 would be the farewell reception commencing at 5:15. So given that we don't have a social as such this year, other than the board games evening, I think on Tuesday. I didn't highlight that, but I think that's on Tuesday. So the chance to network with everyone that's still there Friday afternoon, early evening, and maybe have a beer or two, I think is important to do if at all possible. Again, anyone got anything else to highlight from Friday? And if not, I'll just quickly, I won't spend even less time on these. Just a reminder, the side meetings are a thing as well. Stuff that jumped out to me from those purely based on the title is, as you can see from Monday, there's a post-quantum DNSSEC research slot, which looks kind of interesting. And also a post-IETF World DG. I'm not sure what DG stands for, I haven't had a chance to look it up, but it will be mentioned in a hot RFC first on Sunday evening. So it should be clearer what that's all about, but the title is certainly intriguing. If you find yourself not engaged in whatever is on the agenda in the main sessions. Nothing jumped out at me on Tuesday from the titles. I will look at these in more detail to see specifically what's planned. Wednesday, rather less on the agenda, but one of the things which did look interesting was DNS-based load balancing. So another new thing for the DNS to do, but talking about looking at DNS geo-targeting and load balancing to give some indication of the likely scope of that. Of course, the challenge is that all of these almost certainly clash with relevant working groups. The one I almost certainly will go to, if I, because I don't think it clashes actually, because it's quite late on, the Public Interest Technology Group, which my unofficial description is all the people that are really bothered about privacy tend to go there to talk about stuff, and it's really interesting to hear that worldview, that perspective, even if I don't necessarily share that worldview. So yeah, if you find yourself at a loose end on Thursday early evening, that could be a good use of your time. And then Friday, there's only one side meeting because I think it'd be quite ambitious otherwise. And that's the now traditional slot for those of us that are interested in education and outreach. EODIA, for whatever reason, seems to always meet on a Friday now between 8:15 and 9:15, which is just what you need when you're flagging towards the end of the week to have to sort of be up and about reasonably smartly to go into that after breakfast, etc. And that, I think, oh, I didn't mean to leave that there. So that's everything from me. Apologies from the agenda. So let me stop sharing there for a moment and just say that, does anyone got any other thoughts on the agenda or other meeting related things? As they relate to the IETF in a few weeks' time. Other than the fact that, has been mentioned in the chat, that Canadian beer should be available, which is important. Okay, I'm taking it as not, so let me refine my place in the slides, which I've now done. Right, so I managed to hide the right buttons. Right, let me unpause screen sharing. Okay, so right, so and I should have apologized at the start that this call inevitably means I'm going to tend to do a lot of talking, which is a bit tedious for everybody else. But I'm going to segue straight into just signposting you to some of the more interesting stuff in the news headlines from the last week. So, and I'm not going to go through all of these. Those of you on the news headlines mailing list will have had these anyway. And if you haven't and want to be added to the mailing list, ping me an email and I will do so. But in case you don't have a chance to look through them yet, the first one is continuing a story which I also flagged last week, OpenDNS sulks France following a blocking decision. The original article was in French, so I'm not sure if the translation's perfect, but that's how it came out. In essence, basically, it was covering the fact that post-court decisions in France and Portugal relating to requiring open resolvers, not just ISP resolvers, to block certain content on the back of court cases. OpenDNS has decided to block access to its services in France and Portugal. I'm not sure if any of the other affected open resolvers have done so yet. I think Cloudflare was covered, and I think Google as well. So not just Cisco, but so far OpenDNS has announced its endeavouring to pull service within France specifically. Also, mentioning Cloudflare, Quad 1 had an outage relatively recently, and they've now sort of reported back on that. And you'll see there, I think we all know that normally it is, of course, the DNS. In this case, the DNS was out, so it is, of course, the BGP, which is the other standard thing. If it wasn't the DNS, then it's almost invariably the BGP, as seems to be the case this time round. So there's coverage in Bleeping Computer, as well as a press release I've linked to as well, from, or blog post rather, from Cloudflare itself. Other things are probably, I'm not going to go through all these exhaustively. I do think that the article by Mark McFadden is definitely well worth your look. The one at the bottom there, the rise of intermediaries, certainly worth just catching up on. It's just sort of sharing his views on the implications for having various sort of intermediary type services within the ecosystem, and looking specifically at privacy preserving approaches, referencing a recent IAB paper, which I confess I've not had a chance to look at, but will do now that Mark's highlighted it. There's a bunch of other stuff, including on some malicious content, and then the one at the bottom of the page, coincidentally the one Wilma mentioned in the chat, which is the SSL keylog file extension for ECH, which, as I say, new sort of zero draft. I think it's a zero draft, has just been published within the TLS working group. Okay. And then finally, there's a few other bits and pieces. Probably, again, the only one I mentioned, the one at the bottom, is the DNS Research Federation has got a NIS2 Article 28 tracker. So for those of you that have an interest in NIS2, it will tell you for each of the European Union's member states what the status is of transposing Article 28 of the NIS2 directive into national law, and whether they're on track to do so by the mid-October required target from the legislation. And also, just a reminder, we're going to be talking again about NIS2 on our call, on this call on the 16th of September. So a couple of months' time from here, Mark is going to sort of revisit that with us. And yes, Tommy's just highlighted in the chat, so the UK IGF meeting does conflict with the IETF 121 meeting in Dublin, which is a real shame. But I think that was limited. They had to do it before the IGF 24 meeting proper in Saudi in early December, and for various reasons to do with the Secretariat, weren't able to look at any dates before then, and they had limited availability of the venue that they were using. So they know that there's a clash, but I think through force of circumstance have had to press ahead. So if you can't go to Dublin, go to the UK IGF if you happen to be in the UK on the, I think that's on the 5th of November. Okay, I won't have time to talk about these. You can read these at your leisure, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff which caught my eye from the news this week. Not really DNS related, but of interest to me. So you see a series of links there, some of which might possibly be of interest to you as well. But looking at the time, I won't bother talking about those. Okay, in terms of some looming deadlines, going back to IETF 120, if you've not registered to attend and plan to do so, the early registration cutoff is midnight tonight, or 23:59 UTC to be specific, tonight. So in a few hours' time. After which, if you're attending in person, the weekly rate jumps up by another, I think it's roughly $200. The remote rate jumps up by $50 or $60. Although, as always, fee waivers are available for a remote registration as well. And Suzanne has rightly commented, just going back to the clash of various meetings, the OARC 43 is immediately before RIPE in the autumn in Prague, which is immediately before the IETF as well. And I must admit, not on my radar, but from your note, Suzanne, is immediately before ICANN. So you've got potentially 4 weeks worth of back-to-back meetings, which will be fantastic if you find yourself drawn to all of those. Okay, so we go back to sort of key dates. So if you've not registered already and have planned to go to the ITF meeting in person, save $200 or so by registering by 23:59 UTC today, or it jumps up. I think it's $1,250 or something along those lines. Also coming up relatively soon, you've got the deadline for initial submissions of proposals for presentations at the OARC 43 meeting coming up in a couple of weeks' time. So I think whilst we're at the ITF meeting, I think. Similarly, the European Commission's NIS2 feedback consultation, again, that is, I think that's the Thursday or Friday. I think that's the Friday of ITF week. And also there's, if you want to have a remote hub at the IGF meeting in December, you've got till the end of the month for that, as you have if you want to apply for funding from the RIPE Community Projects Fund as well. And if there are other dates like okay, UK V6 Council as well. That looks fun too. Okay, I'll if need be, I'll add that to the list of dates, Tommy. I'm just seeing that in the chat. Okay, so there's some deadlines coming up soonish, but the most pressing one is ITF 120 registration. And then again, obviously not go through these, but yeah, there's plenty of meetings. We've got a bit of a pause after the end of July. Something of a lull there until if you go to AP Nick in Wellington, you'll see that begins on the 30th of August, but there's about a month's gap between the sort of main conferences, and then things pick up at pace in September, as you can see, with the ICANN DNS Symposium, etc. And then all the other stuff we've just mentioned. Okay, so we will continue this discussion. That's the plan, at least next week, when I'll have pull out a few, not all of them because it'll take far too long, but some of the more interesting things from the agendas for individual working groups, so as appropriate. So I'll do that by exception, assuming that they're all available by, I think, by the end of this week. They're meant to be on. I'm sure they won't all be available then, but it should give a better steer as to which things warrant more of our time. Right, I'm going to stop sharing and, more importantly, stop talking for a moment at that point, and just say we're kind of at any other business plus anything else anyone wants to say about the ITF meeting or anything else that's cropped up. So if you have, raise your virtual hand, put something in the chat, or just unmute and start talking if nobody else is, whatever's easiest for you. No one's got anything that you want to share? I'll give you probably about 30 seconds to do so. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat currently. Doesn't look like it. Anything from the chat that anyone wants to expand on? Such as Tommy, with your 2 drafts you submitted to DNS Ops. If you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to expand on your comment in the chat, or anyone else, before we draw the call to a close.
Sure. So in general, encrypted DNS really shouldn't be using client auth because it's a definition of user tracking, right? But in the enterprise case, where we see the rise of protective DNS, where the enterprise runs their own encrypted DNS service, client auth is actually a good thing, because then you can do policy application by the client identity. Whereas today, a lot of customers do that via the source IP address, which is nonsense, especially nonsense in the work from home scenario. So we've submitted a draft. I say we, co-authoring with Jessica from Microsoft and Jeff and Matt from Amazon. Best practices as to when implementations should accept client auth in encrypted DNS, and what you should use. Spoiler alert, we're all big fans of MTLS. The other draft is an update to RFC 7050, which describes how to use DNS 6.4 to discover the IPv6 translation prefix of the network, which currently states that clients should prefer a secure channel to the DNS 6.4 server, where secure channel is defined as, we don't know, using IPsec or something, more or less is the current definition. And since that was published, we have RFC 9463, which allows the network to advertise its own encrypted DNS servers. So if the DNS 6.4 server supports encryption, this draft updates 7050 to say you should prefer discovering that and using encrypted DNS, and networks should provide that. So if that triggers any controversy in your mind, you should come join the party. The mailing list has already kind of went off on a tangent about whether we should deprecate DNS 6.4 in the process. I swear I didn't go in with that intention, but that's where we are so far.
Based on the last IETF meeting, the session on the Sunday morning, I'm all for deprecating IPv6, but I suspect that will take a bit of selling to the rest of the IETF community.
How dare you?
I might save that for when I think the list moderators are becoming bored, and just pop something into the IETF main list just for the sheer fun of it, and then go on holiday for a week or 5. Brilliant. Okay. Oh, no, proceed.
Quick question, Tommy, is that a topic you should maybe pop over into ADD and also present on, just in case there is anybody in the group that isn't already aware?
So I wasn't planning on it because it seemed well outside our charter, but I'm happy to bring drafts to ADD if you want. Which one?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure the draft is the right place, but it may be awareness of the draft about the authentication. Just given
Sure.
the subject matter and the target audience, maybe there might be somebody that is interested, but maybe isn't as deep into the other groups that you're currently in, working on it.
Sure. Do I need to submit a 5-minute request somewhere?
Yeah. And also for your other draft too, by the way. Nudge.
Okay. Oh, right. EDSR. Okay, yeah. Email fine, or is there a GitHub I should merge that into?
Just drop me an email to ADD chairs.
Okay, will do.
Emails in the chat just below your message, below Wilman's message. Sorry. Chairs
Outlook.
ADD chairs at IETF.org.
My Outlook has that email memorized.
I
can confirm he does.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Well, yeah, that's useful to highlight then, and sounds really interesting actually. To be fair, as well, Tommy. So definitely worth coming to DNS Ops and ADD in that case, for both of those. Okay. Anyone else got anything else that you want to highlight this week? Not seeing anything. Okay, in which case, as I say, we'll revisit this next week, but I'll just selectively call out some of the specific working group agendas. So again, we'll do it on the same basis. I'll flip through a few. If anyone wants to highlight any other specific things of interest, feel free to either ping me an email in advance or to my list, or just chime in during the discussion. But it'll cover less because it takes too long, but are just the ones where the actual agendas warrant a bit more discussion. So with that in mind, then let's call a halt there. So thanks everyone for your time. Hopefully some of you will see in person for a change in Vancouver in not very long. But yeah, we'll be on the call this time next week. I'll be somewhere in the Canadian Rockies, I think, for the call. So fingers crossed the hotel Wi-Fi is working well. So have a fantastic week and catch up same time next week. Speak to you all then. Bye all.